It was 3 to 15 in the morning in Queens, New York. A young woman named Kitty Genovese was walking home from work. She parked her car. She was less than 100 feet from her front door. She thought she was safe. A man followed her from the parking lot. He caught up to her near a street light. He attacked her with a knife. She screamed. She screamed loud enough that windows lit up across the entire apartment building. 38 people, according to the initial newspaper report, heard her cries for help that night. 38 sets of eyes, 38 working telephones, and for a chilling stretch of time, not one single call to the police. The attack didn't end in seconds. It lasted over 30 minutes, in 2 separate episodes, as the attacker left and returned. Kitty Genovese died that night, and a question was born that would haunt psychology for the next 60 years. How did 38 human beings, decent, ordinary people, watch a woman die and do nothing? The answer, when scientists finally found it, was more disturbing than anyone expected. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about crowds. The story made headlines across the entire country. Newspapers called it proof that society had become numb, that people no longer cared about each other. Politicians used it as evidence of moral collapse. Sociologists used it as evidence of urban alienation. Almost everyone assumed the witnesses were simply bad people. But 2 psychologists in New York looked at the same case and asked a completely different question than everyone else was asking. Instead of asking what was wrong with those 38 people, they asked what might be true of any 38 people, anywhere, including you. In 1968, 2 social psychologists named John Darley and Bibb Latané read about the Genovese case in the newspaper. Most people reacted with outrage, blaming the witnesses for being cold, indifferent, or morally broken. Darley and Latané refused to accept that explanation. They suspected something deeper was happening, something built into human psychology itself. So they designed an experiment to test a radical idea. Maybe more witnesses don't increase the chance of help. Maybe they decrease it. They invited college students into a room, one at a time, to discuss personal problems through an intercom system. Each student believed they were talking to either one other person, or a small group of several people, in separate rooms. During the conversation, one of the voices, actually a recording, began to choke and gasp, clearly having a seizure. The voice cried out for help, then fell silent, simulating a medical emergency happening in real time. When participants believed they were the only other person on the call, 85% rushed to help within minutes. But when participants believed 4 other people were also listening, that number collapsed to just 31%. The more witnesses who were present, the less likely any single person was to act. The effect was not small. It was massive. Darley and Latané had just proven, in a controlled laboratory, the exact phenomenon that killed Kitty Genovese on a Queens sidewalk. They named it the bystander effect. And it would go on to become one of the most replicated findings in the history of psychology. Over 50 years of research, across dozens of countries, has confirmed the same unsettling truth again and again. In 2011, a massive analysis combined data from over 7,000 participants across nearly 50 separate studies spanning 4 decades. The conclusion was unambiguous. The more bystanders present during an emergency, the lower the probability that any individual helps, almost without exception. This pattern held true across cultures, across age groups, across genders, and across dramatically different types of emergencies. It appeared in studies involving fires, falls, fights, medical emergencies, and even something as small as a dropped stack of papers. The first psychological mechanism behind the bystander effect is called diffusion of responsibility. When you are the only witness to an emergency, 100% of the responsibility to act rests on you alone. There is no one else to share the weight. No one else to blame if you fail to help. The decision is entirely yours. But the moment a second person appears, something shifts instantly inside your brain. Even if neither of you says a word, your mind unconsciously divides the responsibility in half. With 10 witnesses present, That responsibility splits into 10 invisible fractions. Each person silently feels less personally obligated, because surely, someone else in this crowd will step in. This is not laziness. It is not cruelty. It is a mathematical miscalculation that happens automatically, beneath conscious awareness. Your brain is doing social math in real time, and the equation it solves almost always favors inaction in a crowd. Researchers call this effect remarkably consistent. It appears in emergencies, in classrooms, in offices, even in online comment sections. When everyone assumes someone else will act, the mathematical result is often that absolutely no one acts at all. This explains a strange paradox that confuses most people. You are statistically safer asking for help when fewer people are around. A single witness on an empty street is more likely to help you than 50 witnesses on a crowded one. This finding has reshaped how cities design emergency call systems, and how safety campaigns now specifically instruct victims in crowded public spaces. It directly contradicts the old assumption that more people automatically means more safety. In emergencies, more people can quietly mean less safety. Some researchers have called diffusion of responsibility one of the most counterintuitive findings in all of social psychology. It overturns a comforting belief most people hold without ever questioning it: the belief that being surrounded by others guarantees protection. The second mechanism is even stranger, and it is called pluralistic ignorance. This is where the crowd actively misleads itself. Imagine you witness something ambiguous: a man yelling at a woman, a person collapsed on a sidewalk, smoke near a building. Your first instinct is not to act immediately. Your first instinct is to look around and check how other people are reacting. This is a deeply human survival strategy. For most of history, other people's reactions were reliable signals about real danger. But here is the trap. Everyone else in the crowd is doing the exact same thing at the exact same moment. Everyone is looking at everyone else, searching for a signal, while projecting an outward expression of calm they don't actually feel. Because each person sees a crowd of calm-looking faces, each person concludes, this situation must not be a real emergency. In reality, every single person might be terrified and uncertain, but the visible signal they send each other is silence and stillness. This is pluralistic ignorance: a crowd of frightened people, each one convinced they are the only one who is frightened. Psychologists call this a self-reinforcing illusion, because the calmer everyone looks, the calmer everyone tries to look in return. In emergencies, this illusion can be lethal. A fire alarm goes off, and people look at their calm-faced co-workers instead of evacuating. Smoke fills a room, and everyone waits for someone else to confirm the danger is real before anyone dares to move. Researchers have documented real fire drills where this exact freeze occurred, with people sitting calmly at desks while smoke visibly filled the air around them. In one famous study, researchers pumped smoke into a room where participants sat filling out a questionnaire, alone or in groups of 3. 75% of solitary participants left immediately to report the smoke. In groups, only 10% of participants ever got up at all. The remaining 90% simply kept filling out their forms, glancing occasionally at the smoke, then glancing at the calm faces around them. Some participants later admitted they assumed it was steam from a vent, or air conditioning, or anything other than what their senses were telling them. The third mechanism is called evaluation apprehension: the fear of being judged, embarrassed, or wrong in front of an audience. Imagine rushing forward to help someone who simply tripped, only to discover they were never in danger at all. Now imagine doing that in front of 30 strangers who watch you overreact to a situation that required no action whatsoever. This fear of public embarrassment is far more powerful than most people realize, and it operates on almost every human being. In ambiguous emergencies, the safest social move always appears to be doing nothing and waiting for clearer information. Doing nothing rarely gets criticized. Acting incorrectly in public, however, can feel humiliating, even when the cause was compassion. So your brain quietly weighs two outcomes: the risk of embarrassment against the risk of someone else's suffering. In a crowd, surrounded by judging eyes, the embarrassment often feels more immediate and more vivid than the abstract suffering of a stranger. This is not because people are selfish monsters. It is because human brains evolved in small tribes, where social status meant survival. Being mocked or rejected by your tribe was, for most of human history, a genuine threat to your safety, your resources, and your life. Modern crowds of strangers trigger that same ancient social alarm, even though the actual stakes today are completely different. Your prehistoric brain still treats public embarrassment as a danger nearly as real as the emergency happening right in front of you. Psychologists have found that this fear is so powerful it can override basic compassion, even in people who consider themselves deeply caring. In experiments, participants reported genuinely wanting to help, while simultaneously feeling physically frozen by the fear of how the crowd might judge them. Many real-life bystanders later describe lasting guilt and shame, not because they were callous, but because evaluation apprehension overpowered their genuine concern. Here is the most hopeful part of 50 years of bystander research. The effect is not a fixed law of human nature. It can be broken. Scientists have identified specific conditions under which people in crowds become just as likely to help as people who are alone. The first condition is direct eye contact. If a victim looks directly at one specific person and asks them by name, the spell shatters. Diffusion of responsibility requires anonymity. The moment responsibility is assigned to one identifiable person, it can no longer be shared. This is why safety experts now teach a specific technique. If you are ever in danger in a crowd, point at one person and speak directly to them. Say their clothing, their position, anything specific. You, in the red jacket, call an ambulance now, and the diffusion instantly collapses. The second condition is prior training. Trained professionals, lifeguards, nurses, soldiers, show dramatically reduced bystander effects. Training replaces uncertainty with a clear script for action, removing the ambiguity that causes pluralistic ignorance to take hold. The third condition is a single person breaking the freeze first. Researchers call this the first responder effect. The instant one person in a crowd takes visible action, the diffusion of responsibility reverses almost immediately, and others rapidly follow. This means a single brave or simply informed individual can flip the behavior of an entire crowd within seconds. One person stepping forward gives everyone else silent permission and a clear signal that the danger is, in fact, real. Researchers call this social proof in reverse. Instead of inaction spreading through a crowd, decisive action can spread through a crowd just as fast. This discovery has become the foundation of modern bystander intervention training, taught in schools, workplaces, and universities worldwide. The core message of every program is identical. You do not need permission to act, and your single action can become permission for everyone else. In the decades after 1964, historians and journalists revisited the original newspaper account of that terrible night. They discovered the famous number 38 witnesses had been exaggerated by the press to sell a more dramatic story. Some neighbors did call the police. One woman rushed outside and held Kitty as she lay dying, refusing to leave her alone. The real story was more complicated than pure indifference, but the psychological forces Dali and Latané discovered were still completely real. The bystander effect did not require all 38 people to do nothing. It only required enough hesitation to cost precious minutes. And in a true emergency, minutes are often the exact margin between someone living and someone dying. This is the uncomfortable truth science eventually confirmed. You are not protected by the presence of other people. In many emergencies, you are statistically more vulnerable, precisely because everyone assumes someone else has already taken action. You might assume the bystander effect belongs to a different era, to dark streets and old apartment buildings. But psychologists have discovered it living comfortably inside a place none of the original researchers could have imagined: your phone. Online, the same exact mathematics applies. When someone posts a cry for help on social media, viewers see how many others have already seen it. A view counter showing thousands of views creates instant diffusion of responsibility, even though no physical crowd is standing in a room. Each person scrolling assumes that among thousands of viewers, surely someone more capable or more informed has already taken action. Researchers studying live-streamed emergencies have found viewers commenting in real time, debating, speculating while almost no one calls for help. This is sometimes called the digital bystander effect, and disturbingly, it can be even more powerful than the physical version. Online, there is no eye contact to break the spell. No clear way to point at one specific viewer and assign them direct responsibility. Comment sections fill with pluralistic ignorance too. Everyone types calm jokes or skeptical comments, each person assuming the calm tone means it must be fine. Meanwhile, the person on the other side of the screen may be experiencing a genuine crisis, surrounded by an audience instead of silence. This single insight has changed how platforms design emergency reporting tools, and how schools now teach digital responsibility to teenagers. Understanding the digital bystander effect is no longer optional knowledge. It is becoming as essential as understanding the original sidewalk version. In several documented cases, live stream viewers numbering in the tens of thousands watched real assaults or accidents unfold without a single report. Investigators later interviewed some viewers, many of whom said the exact same thing. They assumed someone else, somewhere among thousands, had already alerted authorities. This is diffusion of responsibility at a scale Dali and Latané could never have imagined in 1968, multiplied by the sheer size of the internet. A crowd of 38 people on a street has become a crowd of 38,000 people behind screens, and the math only grows more lopsided. Emergency responders who study crowd psychology have developed simple, repeatable rules that override the bystander effect almost instantly. The first rule is what trainers call the 3-second rule. In any ambiguous emergency, give yourself only 3 seconds to decide before acting. 3 seconds is short enough to prevent overthinking, but long enough to glance around and confirm a genuine threat exists. Waiting longer than 3 seconds allows pluralistic ignorance to fully take hold, as your brain starts reading everyone else's calm expressions. The second rule is the direct assignment technique mentioned earlier, but emergency trainers add an important detail. Repeat the instruction. Saying, "You call 911" once may not break through someone's own confusion. Saying it twice, firmly, dramatically increases the chance they respond. The third rule is physical movement. Simply standing and pointing is less effective than physically walking toward the person in danger. Movement signals certainty to everyone else nearby. A moving body in a frozen crowd acts like a single domino that topples every other domino. First responders describe this phenomenon constantly. The instant one civilian moves with purpose, an entire crowd often shifts from spectators to helpers. This single piece of knowledge that you personally have the power to break an entire crowd's paralysis is the most important lesson in this story. Many fire departments and emergency medical services now run public workshops specifically teaching these 3 techniques to ordinary citizens, not just professionals. The reasoning is simple. In most emergencies, a trained civilian arrives at the scene long before any professional responder possibly can. Those critical first minutes, sometimes called the golden window, often determine survival far more than anything that happens after professionals finally arrive. Knowing how to break the bystander effect during that golden window may be one of the most underrated life-saving skills any ordinary person can learn. We live inside more crowds than any generation in human history: physical crowds, online crowds, group chats, comment sections, crowded feeds. Every single one of those crowds carries the exact same hidden mathematics that killed a young woman on a Queens sidewalk in 1964. Every time you see a struggling friend post something quietly worrying online, and you assume someone closer to them will check in, that is diffusion of responsibility. Every time you witness unfair treatment at work and stay silent because nobody else in the meeting is reacting, that is pluralistic ignorance, alive and well. Every time you hesitate to speak up because you're worried about how 30 co-workers might judge your reaction, that is evaluation apprehension, doing exactly what it evolved to do. These three mechanisms are not relics of one tragic night 60 years ago. They are operating quietly, every single day, inside rooms you walk into right now. The bystander effect is not a story about 38 strangers in 1964. It is a mirror, and the reflection in it belongs to all of us. The only real question left is what you choose to do the next time you recognize that reflection staring back. You now understand something that the people in that Queens apartment building never had the chance to learn. You understand that silence in a crowd is not proof of safety. It is often proof of shared confusion, not shared calm. You understand that the responsibility you feel in any emergency does not actually shrink just because more people are watching. It only feels smaller. The moral weight of the moment remains exactly the same size, no matter how many people share the silence. So if you are ever in a crowd and something feels wrong, remember the lesson hidden inside this entire story. Do not wait for someone else's face to tell you it's real. Be the first person to move. Be the one who points and speaks directly. Because somewhere, on some ordinary night, 38 calm faces are once again about to make the same fatal mistake. And all it will take to change the outcome is one single person who refuses to wait for permission to care. That person could be a stranger you will never meet. Or, on some ordinary day, in some ordinary crowd, that person could be you. Knowledge alone cannot save a life. But knowledge, combined with 3 seconds of courage, has saved more lives than most people will ever know.